Good morning. It is great to see you here. I would like to spend a few weeks talking about the fact that God still exists. There's some discussion among a narrower segment of the scientific community than you would think of that said God does not exist, and God and science are compatible only in the fact that science disproves the existence of God. And there's a new and very energetic movement that's happening right now called the Angry Atheist, energized by Dawkins and some other people. In fact, it's interesting when Ashley went to start her course towards nursing, the professor opened the class by saying, I hope as we start this, none of you would still hold to the belief that there is any need to have God, because science has basically explained to us that that is not possible, that a God exists. And I thought that was interesting, and so she had to do a paper on it. And I said, well, look up these authors and these books. And they were not to be found in the college. And so if you don't look at the subject, God cannot exist. However, if an intelligent person actually does their research, it is a difficult proposition from scientific fact to say that God does not exist. Did you ever get into one of those discussions about God? Didn't go well? Basically, you might be talking to a deist or an atheist. A deist is a person who thinks that God just created it, spun it into existence, and then took off and had a few billion years coffee. So, and they believe God to be disinterested and uninvolved. There might be a God somewhere, there might not be, but really doesn't matter. We're just here. And the truth is that if you had the proper books in your library and the proper research, that is not what the scientific evidence shows. It shows that there is a God who is intensely interested and intensely involved in our universe. Jerry Coyne, who's a professor of the ecology of evolution at the University of Chicago, was the one who gave the quote, "Science and religion are incompatible only in the fact that science proves the claims of religion." However, I started with that position. I didn't believe there was a God, and until I hit this problem. And I was in my 20s, and all of a sudden, there's too much stuff here to be rolling around to not have a beginning and a source. And over time, 20 years, I came to the conclusion that Psalms 102 happened to be true. And if you take your notes out, this is what David said. And we talked a couple years ago about how accurate was the Bible as regards to science and stuff, and we spent 3 or 4 weeks on that, but listen to this and read it with me. This is not the verse I was going to tell you. The verse I was going to tell you about is in Romans, and it says, "In the beginning, you," means God, "laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands." In other words, the psalmist is laying on his back, looking up at the universe, and he says, God did that. My God did that. And he's not talking about the God of last resort. What do I mean? We can't explain it. You just say God did it. But when we look at it, we will see you have to explain it through the hand of God. And there's 3 different areas of science that prove the existence of God and prove that we had to have one. And the first one has to do with the area of cosmology. Now, I don't know about you, but I watch nearly every program I can get on cosmology. I just love it. Where did the universe come from? And it is so interesting. And for centuries, the scientists just believe it always was. We don't have to explain where it came from. It just always was. Therefore, we don't need God. That was easy. However, most scientists today, if not all, are pretty well convinced that it had a beginning. That would be the Borg-Guth-Velkin theory. And Dr. Alexander Velkin is the head of cosmology at Tufts University. And so he's looking and trying to solve this problem. Where did this stuff come from? And here's what he says. With the proof now in place, cosmologists can no longer hide behind the possibility of a past eternal universe. In other words, no longer can scientists say that it just always was, that was easy, therefore there's no God. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. And so what he's saying is, this is not a problem unless you're an atheist. Now you have a problem. The Callum cosmological argument goes like this. First of all, it does exist, therefore it has a cause. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. That's a rule. In other words, your children would claim differently. The room is in disarray and your lamp is broken and laying on the floor. They might try to explain to you that they didn't do it or anybody in this house, therefore there was no cause for this. As a parent, we're suspicious that, in fact, there was a source of this mess and a cause for it. And so if there is something, there has to be something that started it. So since the universe began to exist, it must have a cause. Now, what kind of cause did it have to have? And the answer is the principle of Occam's razor, which is, he said there must be just one creator. And he's talking about what would it take to spin this universe into place. And he talks about the attributes of the person or energy or entity that could put the universe into place. Penzias, who's a Nobel Prize winner, says that the best data we have concerning the origin of the universe is exactly what I would have predicted had I nothing to go on but the first 5 books of Moses, the Psalms, and the Bible as a whole. Incidentally, that's how my brother came to the conclusion of God. He was studying cosmology in university, and he's looking at the gases that were around, and they began to congeal and attract to each other. And he says, that sounds like there was no form and void. And then he goes on about how they came into form of an earth, and it became, and he's going through cosmological explanation for how we got here. And he's saying to himself, that is the exact same description I've been taught all my life from the Bible. And so he's saying, these guys seem to be explaining how God did it. I never assumed there was a God. And so simply through looking at what we believe in our best evidence now is that God or somebody was ordering this thing in the same way as we find it written in the Scriptures. He said, maybe I should give another look at Scriptures. That was an interesting response. Doc, can I get you to get me my coffee cup? It's on my desk. Now, there's an interesting thing that people have objections to this. I mean, if you're relaxed and you look at it, you go, yeah, that makes sense. And there's the objection of, okay, so God did it. Who made God? Who created God? Now, you need to know that should not be a problem for an atheist, because their original position was we don't have to have a God because the universe always existed. It only becomes a problem when we said God always existed. Now it's a problem to the atheist. But anyways, the second objection, which is raised by Stephen Hawking, who's the author of The Great Design, he believes that the universe sort of popped into existence by itself based on the law of gravity. And he explains that once you have the law of gravity, that it's quite easy to understand how we got here without a God. This is easy. You remember the joke about God and the scientists are having an argument about we don't need you, God. Science, we got this all figured out. And he said, go ahead, let's see who can make life. And no, I think there's a green Tim Hortons donut thing. Anybody here who knows what a Tim Hortons cup is? Hallelujah. All right. You have to go to a sanctuary to get them. And when you listen to what they say, it makes sense. Yeah, the law of gravity, it could do all this stuff, except for one problem. It is the scientist reaching down, and he's going to make life, and he grabs a handful of dirt, and he says, this is how we in science can make life. And God says, wait, make your own dirt. So this is basically the same argument. They believe that the universe had a beginning because it's expanding at a phenomenal rate, which means at one point it came from someplace. So if you take this someplace, which they call the point of origin, which is, they said it was in until I get my coffee. As soon as I get my coffee, I'll be able to tell you what this is. Infinitesimally small, smaller than an atom. And he says, now, if you have the force of gravity, this will work. Now, here's what they're asking you to do in your mind, okay? This incredibly small particle, smaller than an atom, was hit by an unbelievable force for some reason with enough power, that E equals mc squared. So mass and energy are related. That means that little piece of mass was hit by an unbelievably large amount of energy from somewhere. And out of that little dot, smaller than an atom, came everything that you see. As listening, and really, the scientists, most of them are not arrogant about this. They know there's a problem. I actually had the clip, but I can't figure out how to get it off my DVR to show you. And the scientist is saying this point of singularity, for some reason, was energized by something that we don't know. And the point of singularity, we don't know where it came from, but our understanding is that this point was hit by some energy and blew up into the universe that we have today. And so basically he's saying we can tell you what we think happened, but he explains very clearly, we have no idea what hit that thing or why it hit it or where it came from. And so people will say that Christians accept things on blind faith. I would say, I don't have enough faith for that. That's what I would say. I'm struggling with that. How much energy would that take to make that thing come? So Stephen Hawking says, if you give me the power, the dot, and the explosion from gravity on, I got it. Just give me my own dirt, and I can solve this problem. Look, it's just, it won't fly. So the other thing that, this is mind-bending, but the cosmological constants, there are 50 categories of constants that have to be exactly the way they are, or you die. The Earth has to be at a 23.5 degree tilt, 24, you're dead. The sun, the moon has to be exactly that mass, traveling that distance from the Earth at that speed, or you're dead. The oxygen level has to be exactly where it is now, or you're dead. And there are thousands upon thousands of what they call cosmological constants that have to be where they are at this exact moment in time, or you're dead. Then you look at how many of these are there, and what are they? And so what is it that if somebody might not be God, could have been somebody, didn't calculate to the exact specifications that are here now, we would not be here. Some of this is fine-tuned to the part of 100 million, billion. That's just one factor. Now you get 100,000 of those factors that all have to be tuned to a billionth of a fraction, and all of a sudden you're saying, what a coincidence. And here are just a few of them, just for interest's sake. The universe couldn't exist if we weren't exactly at this rate of expansion. In other words, when whatever this was hit by whatever hit it, it began to expand, and for the first few nanoseconds, it expanded at a rate faster than our current physics laws will allow it. In other words, it expanded faster than the speed of light. So they call that inflation. So there was an inflationary expansion, and then it settled down into the several 100,000 miles an hour. Now, but if it didn't stay or accelerate exactly the way that it is, you're dead, okay? It's easy. There are a bunch of dials. There's about 50 of them. That's one of them. The other one is the strong nuclear force, which is the force that holds atoms together. And if it wasn't there, exactly the proportion that is, you're dead. So, you're going to see a theme come out here. In fact, most of our structure is air. When you look at us, most of it is electrons gathering around a nucleus. And so, basically, most of us are not there. What a scientific discovery that was. All right. Now, when we go through this, each of those 50 parameters and thousands of exact scientific physical measurements that have to be exactly where they are. The President Association of Women for Science, she said that the exquisite order displayed in our scientific understanding of the physical world calls for the divine. You can get up to so many coincidences, and we don't stop at a trillion. I know you don't even know what a trillion is. But the coincidences come like this. I don't even know what that number is. They had to make new numbers. It's called a Google. 1 to the Google power. And all of this stuff is just, it cannot be probability. Do you know what I'm saying? And the other thing is, what comes next after to the Google power? Lyle, what is it that comes after the Google power? What is it? Yes. The power to Yahoo, the power to... All right, anyways, we're back. we have serious prayer times in the morning, you need to know. Now, when we get through this, there's also the weak nuclear forces. There's a problem with gravity. You need to know that they don't know why our gravity is where it is. It just has to be here for us to exist. In fact, there proposed theories all the time. Maybe there is another universe which is drawing 9/10 of the gravity off, leaving us the exact amount that we need to exist. There's some reason there's a bunch of gravity missing. But if our gravity was really what it should be, we would be about this high because we... Anyways, another thing is DNA. And the head of the project, if you remember when President Clinton announced we have discovered what did he say? We've discovered the language of God in the DNA. DNA cannot develop the way that it did by random, the way it's explained to us through the theory of evolution. It cannot happen that way because of the probabilities. In fact, the other night at class, they were talking about one single strand of 100-piece DNA, needs more than 13.5 billion years to develop. Now you take a piece of human DNA and it's exponentially complex. In fact, the doctor in charge at that period of time, when they said, this is the language of God, I have 30 hours of his teaching on this one topic of why it can't be random. These are some of the most brilliant minds in the world saying, I started looking at this, not believing in God, and about half the way through it, I got thinking, this is not random. There is a God. In other words, rather than science pointing people away from God, even my own brother, when they looked at it long enough, they said, ooh, problem. Problem. This is not random. There is God. So DNA, I'm not going to get into. I know you want me to spend 30 hours telling you this, but here's the point. Read with me Romans 1:20. God says, I left enough stuff laying around so that you can figure out that I exist. Read it with me. Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power, and his divine nature have been clearly seen to be So we said the first area was cosmology, and then we went through the arguments that come here, the strong and weak nuclear force. And now, here is what happens. And that is that all of this evidence leaves you with, unless you want to have blind faith in science, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of people do. They would just say, there's so many contradictions in the Bible, I can't believe it, and this, and this, and this, and this. And then you ask, what have you been looking at? And the answer is nothing, because you can't look hard at this stuff without at least going, whoops, I have a problem. Now, can you show me that universe, Sherry? Did I put that board in front of it? Can you guys see the board? Gravity. Thank goodness it's not 10 times stronger than it is. That's all I can say. Now, what you're looking at is each of these dots represent several 100 billion stars, okay? And so we look at the universe, hundreds and hundreds of billions of galaxies, of hundreds and hundreds of billions of suns in each galaxy. And that's mind-bending, except that when the Space Hubble took the shot, then they explained that the trillions upon trillions of stars and galaxies you're looking at, if you were to hold up a pin, the head of the pin would obliterate the view that you're looking at. There's a lot of pinheads. A lot of pinheads. What am I saying? God says, look, I left enough evidence for you guys that I am here. God is not some source of deism who spun this thing out, then went and had a coffee. He is intensely active and involved, and intensely in the design phase of the universe. Now, listen to, when you see that he can string this stuff together, here's the point of the message. He has no problem ordering a universe of a few trillion galaxies, of a few 100 billion stars in each galaxy. That's not God's problem. God's problem is you and me. A star will stay where God puts it. You go there, don't move for 1 billion years. Okay, got it. I'm here. Listen to this. God has a plan for your life. Do you think that the God who did this is smart enough, knows enough to have a plan for your life? In other words, this stuff doesn't have a random cause. It won't have a random destruction. It isn't a product of chance. There was someone highly involved in all of this creation. There was someone highly involved in your being here. He said one place, before you were a twinkle in your father's eye. No, wait, that's not quite what he said. He said, before you were in the womb, I drew up the plan for you. You are not a product of random chance. You are here by design. Acts 17, I think it's verse 26, where it says he started with one man and one woman. And he put them in the time and the place they needed to be. He set the boundaries for the nation. In other words, not only does he keep this thing running, he keeps the affairs of earth running. And then he brings it down through the Psalms and other verses, and he says, I have a plan for you. Your life is not random. You're not bouncing through life like a pinball trying to get to the $10,000 hole. Your life, should we decide to accept the mission, and if you're old enough to know what that is, should you decide to accept the mission, is to serve God as a royal priest and a holy nation. It doesn't matter what else you do. You can be an engineer, or you can be a pastor. That's going pretty low. But you can be anything. But your primary calling, when we stand before God, is, are you a royal priest? Were you part of my holy nation? Did you bring my kingdom and my will to earth the same way it's done in heaven? That's all that's going to matter. And so this morning I'm asking us, let's not be distracted by the thousands of choices we have and forget the one choice we have to make, to follow God's plan for our life. Now, you guys are all ambassadors, royal priests, part of a holy nation. So I printed a very sophisticated holy business card for the royal priesthood this morning. I would like you to go home with this question. How do we find God's plan for our life? And the best way that I know of is to sit quiet and let him talk to you. I've seen how some of you drive. He won't even ride with you. If you're going to find God's will for your life, go ahead. Can I have the ushers pass these out? Take this home. On the back of it is that verse from St. Peter that says, I didn't use the one in Revelation, although I love it. And it's the one that says, you will become a royal priesthood and a holy nation. And then it says, when we get into his presence, we will serve as priests forever. But this one is just saying who we are here on earth. So, give me one, Doc, and thank you. Now, you see that royal seal, that's part of our royal heaven. I talked to the Lord, and I said, could you send me down a seal of your kingdom? That's it, okay? That's the kingdom seal. And it says, Father, as I wait quietly in your presence, show me your plan for my life. In other words, you're saying this week, Father, I'm going to sit and listen. Talk to me. Guide me. So the same place as he has a place and a time for each person on the earth, he proved that. He says, I left enough evidence to show you I can do this. Just look up some starry night, and you can see I can do this. Now, the stars are no trouble. Us, a little bit. You know, it's funny, he called me to Florida 2 years before I could come. Why? He knew I was going to argue with him. If I was a star, I'd have just went where I was supposed to go. And say, you don't understand, I'm retired. You don't understand, I got my house bought. I have my septic tank approval, which was hard. I have my house plans done. I'm not going anywhere, I'm retired. And I got deer sleeping in my front lawn. I got beavers out my back creek. You don't get it. What about this don't you get? He didn't listen. But he has a plan. What's your plan? What's his plan for your life? Would you talk to him this week? Let's move our faith one step further this week. Where am I supposed to be? What are you doing with my life? How do I be the most productive in your kingdom? Let's stand together. Heavenly Father, we can hear your words to Martha. You are concerned about many things. Busy, 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 busy. Doing this, doing that. Worried about this, worried about that. But Mary chose that which was most important. This week, as we sit quietly in your presence, would you show to us what it is that you feel is most important in our life? You have enough power to hit that point of singularity to blow it into a universe. And you have the ability to quietly talk to our heart and tell us your plan for our life. We accept it. We look forward this week, Lord, to having that conversation with you. In Jesus' all-powerful name, amen. You may be seated. It's Jesus we serve. Remember, there's nothing in the world that came into being that he didn't put here. And that's the same Jesus that we talk to when we sit quiet and talk to the Father. It's the same guy. Let's rejoice that God has called us to be priests, to serve him, and to be a holy nation. Just rejoice. Why? Because God is so, so good. Yeah, he is. And all the time. Don't you love him? You have no idea how much of a thrill it is for me to come and worship with you guys. I would come to this church even if I wasn't the pastor. I really would. You do. If you're a guest with us, I hope you notice that these great hosts parked at the back, left room for you, and maybe even greeted you as you come in. I hope you felt welcome. These are some of the neatest people in Cape Coral. Did I say neat or weird? Neatest people in Cape Coral. And we're so glad you just came and worshiped with us. Lord bless you. And if you fill out a card, I even have a gift for you. It's a big picture of me. And my old dog put her paw print on it, so it's me and the dog. Signed it. Yeah, isn't that sweet? It's not true, but it would be sweet if it really happened. But in here's a gift just for signing up and telling us you're here. And I just hope your experience with us, you really got to talk to God this morning. Amen? Amen. Lord bless you as you give.